Elisabetta is one of the great works of the Italian Bel Canto. And what we mean by Bel Canto, well, literally it translates as beautiful singing. And it was an approach to writing that dominated the 19th century. And we use it as an umbrella term to talk about most of the early years of the 19th century in Italian opera. What it meant in terms of the theatre was a concentration of all of the dramatic storytelling in the vocal parts. So it's not that the orchestra becomes unimportant, and it's not that the staging becomes unimportant, but every emotional detail, every bit of characterization is done through very, very complicated, very athletic singing. So the characters' emotional journeys are traced through these very, very, very wide contrasts of vocal style. It demands a great deal. Bel Canto, you might imagine, simply means singing long, beautiful lines, but it's so much more than that. The singers have to be able to carry long lines, but also sing very, very detailed, fast running passages, which we call coloratura. And in Rossini, there's a fearsomely difficult balance for the singers to strike between a sustained style and this very, very agile singing. As the century progressed, composers tended to ask for slightly less agility and more line and power. But at this point that we're talking about, and Elisabetta is written in 1816, the two are in really close balance, and the cast for this show have to be able to sing very, very rapidly, perfectly in tune runs of notes, and also sustain huge long phrases. So it's all about the singer. And that's really the heart of what we mean by Bel Canto, that the singer's performance and the singer's ability to characterize through these vocal lines is at the heart of what we do. It means in practical terms that we have to always be collaborative and to shape the way we perform the music around the singers. These roles are incredibly difficult and also were written for very specific people, and they were written to show off the skills of very specific singers. Now, of course, at 200 years distance, we have no chance of doing that. But we can do the next best thing, which is to make sure that in terms of tempo, in terms of pacing, and in terms of the way we structure the arias through to the climaxes, that we do this as closely round the singers that we've got as we possibly can. We also have the option always to decorate the vocal line. Rossini assumed that on any repeat of the same music that the singer would decorate the line, would add their own embellishments, and they should add those embellishments in a way that absolutely suited their voice and showed off what they did best. So we have to do exactly the same thing with our singers. We have to make sure that as these arias are going on, when they get to embellish a passage, when they get a repeat, when there's a cadenza for them, that we find a way to do that that is absolutely molded around them and fits them like a glove, because these roles are all about showing off the best of the singer in a way that also illuminates the best of the character. That's the challenge of Bel Canto. It's why it's such a wonderful collaborative procedure, and it should mean that when we have it on stage and when the thing comes alive on stage, you have a really close connection between the person performing the role and the character that they're presenting. Matilda's aria is one of absolute and utter despair. She's come to London in search of her husband to find that he's trapped in a web of political intrigue, that he isn't admitting to her presence, and that he is still a favourite of the Queen and is having to play that political game. So her aria is one of complete and utter despair. The challenge for us was to show that and to find a way into the fast section that doesn't become jolly. And so everything that we do in that fast section and in the decorations that we add is about showing her deep, deep commitment to him and her despair, whilst staying within the framework of the music. We also have to deal with the fact that in our production on stage, we have, and a little spoiler alert, we have the severed head of her mother. Now, there are plenty of places in the music where you could imagine her reacting to that. Our job was then to make the aria tell that story as well as the musical story. So we're constantly using the opportunities to develop and decorate the vocal line to also tell the story of what visually is happening on stage. One of the real challenges of this music, and it's one of the reasons why it doesn't get done terribly often now, is that it requires the whole gamut of the singer's range. These were obviously done without amplification, so it's a very, very specific kind of singing. It's a very physical kind of singing. It requires huge strength, both in the core of the body and just overall stamina. And it's very different from any kind of singing that we tend to see today. It's nothing like any pop singing which is amplified. It's unlike early music, the traditions before Rossini. It's not really quite the same as the grand opera style, where there's a lot of power but not necessarily this incredible flexibility and ability to sing very, very fast passages. So what you're seeing is really vocal Olympics. You're seeing the voice and you're hearing the voice do almost everything that it's possible to do, whilst ideally disguising quite how much effort's going into it. Because of the sheer physical stamina required for these roles, the singers will have spent months, sometimes up to a year, preparing, not simply to learn them intellectually, but just to physically get all of this into the body. They have to be completely trained like an athlete to be able to sustain over the course of 3 hours this level of singing. So they will have started many, many months ago, and then for some of them I saw them maybe 6 months ago, and we looked at some of the decorations that they were going to add. We made sure we were on the same page in terms of general speeds. Obviously things will change in rehearsals, but at least we had the same sort of idea, which meant that they can then prepare how they're going to breathe, how they're going to pace some of these very, very long and difficult phrases. We then got together before Christmas for a week to absolutely solidify all the music, and that's particularly important for any scenes with different people in, so that we can agree in duets, how we're going to pace them and the speed that we're going to take and how we're going to tell the story. Then we have 4 weeks to stage the opera, and then we've had a week and a half in the theatre to try to bring all of the threads together. So it's a big, long process, and they're difficult roles to learn, and they're roles that you do have to sing in and keep them sung in again and again and again, so that you're in the peak of physical training when it comes to putting them on stage, because they are a pretty serious piece of endurance. The sheer difficulty, the sheer physical difficulty of the music does place some limitations on what they can do on stage. Singers these days are pretty amazing at what they can do, and most people, given enough preparation time, can do almost anything whilst singing. But these are roles where the beauty of the tone, where the clarity of the tone, where the ability to phrase delicately is so important, that we really try not to ask the singers to do anything hugely physically demanding other than sing. That actually helps in a drama like this, because it's a very, very formal atmosphere. We're in a court, people behave in an extremely coded and formal way. So in some respects, having the drama in the singing forces people into a stillness and a dignity and almost an artificiality that is completely appropriate to the Elizabethan courtly setting. These are roles that demand a really, really secure singing technique. Before attempting serious Rossini principal roles, a singer needs to be absolutely grounded and know exactly what they're doing from a sheer technical point of view. Some of the comedies have slightly easier roles, which are an easier way into the style. But in the serious operas, he really was not only writing for the best singers in the world, but he was pushing the best singers in the world as far as he possibly could. And the people who sing these roles at the top level still wake up with nightmares in preparation for them. These are all about singing on the edge of the possible, and the excitement lies in being on the edge of the impossible. So they're roles not to be undertaken lightly. They're roles to be built towards through, first of all, a very, very secure grounding in the operas that came before, and Mozart and Handel are particularly good for that because they have, Handel especially, the same balance of very, very fast moving music and big phrases, which prepares you for this. But only when you're completely secure in that sort of music should you start to think about these. They are unbelievably taxing roles to sing.